Hello, it's Chaos, and today we are going to talk about how I plot and plan a book. So I know this is a big question, how do you start your books? How do you plot your books? How do you plan your books? Um, so I'm not a plotter. I am most definitely a discovery writer, a pantser, um, at least when it comes to my first draft. And sometimes other drafts. It really depends on how I'm feeling about the story. Um, so we're going to be talking about antimatter today, the current work in progress that I am working on. So I started the concept of antimatter started out as me wanting to write the backstory, the origin story for a character I had already started writing about. His name is Andy Hines. He is the main character of Serenade, which is a novella, and he plays a big role in Slaughterhouse. Um, and he will continue to play major roles in, books as I write them. So I wanted to do like a little prequel kind of thing. Serenade is kind of a prequel. It takes place around the same time that Slaughterhouse starts. Slaughterhouse starts in March of 2009, whereas Serenade starts in October of 2009. So there's some overlap of the stories, but we don't get a lot because Slaughterhouse is only from Nightmare's perspective. But Antimatter is from Andy's perspective, and there's a dual POV. It's the other POV is Ethan Kensington, who is Andy's boyfriend. I don't know if they ever actually put labels on their relationship in the story, but they're together. Um, so the story started out as just the desire to write an origin story for Andy. And um, I, if I remember correctly, it started out as a playlist. Um, I listened to Silhouette Serenade by Vendetta Red, and it was like, I want to write a story. I want to write a story about Andy, and I just started adding random songs that reminded me of Andy into this playlist. And I don't know how I came across the song Antimatter, but the minute I listened to it, I was like, this is the name of the book. This is the vibe of the story that I'm going to go for. Um, so it's Antimatter by Silent Planet is the uh, namesake of the book. And after I had that kind of figured out, I went into Scrivener and I put down a basic outline. And that basic outline had two character profiles, Andy and Ethan. It has setting notes and chapter summaries. Now, the chapter summaries that are in the original outline, I don't use anymore. I basically used the very beginning, and after that, the story just went its own direction, and I couldn't keep it on on point with the chapter summary that I was using, so I just let it take its own, let it make its own little course thing. Just like go where it wanted to go. That's part of the reason why it's a novel now and not a novella, is because I am putting a lot more thought and attention into character development and everything like that. And like you can do a little character development in novellas, but you can't dive deep into the characters, in my opinion. It doesn't, novellas don't afford you a lot of space to develop really anything. It's like a snapshot, where a novel is can be a whole lifetime of someone. A novella is just a single snapshot of a situation. It's one thing that happened in this person's life compared to, what could be their whole life. Um at least that's my opinion. So uh I started writing, and it just took on a life of its own. Um, I knew I wanted to talk about um, the difference in Andy and Ethan's classes. Um, Andy is in poverty, and Ethan is rich. So they are from completely different worlds. And, Andy's mom is an addict. And so it's diving into how it feels to be the child of an addict from my point of view as a person who grew up with an addict for a parent. Andy gets a lot of my thoughts and feelings from when I was the age of this character, when I was 18. Um, and trying to reconcile a lot of things. There is drug use in the book, and it explores addiction from the point of view of Ethan, who spirals into addiction throughout the story. I wanted to work with Andy's mental illnesses. He's got a personality disorder. And I wanted to really dive into that, dive into how he handles certain situations, you know, just basic things. So, like, all of that went into developing this concept for antimatter that I really kept in my head. I didn't really write it down anywhere. I conversed with people like about it, but I get a lot of brainstorming done when I talk to people. So like I'll be having a conversation and I'll just be like, "Oh, this." and I'll go off on a tangent, and like I'll figure things out as I'm like talking, as I'm, you know, conversing about things. Um when it comes to an outline, so I have a Notion template that I really absolutely love. I bought it from another YouTuber. Um excuse me. But it comes with an outline, and I absolutely love the the way it's set up. So it's set up in 3 acts, but act 2 is split into 2 different sections. Um so let's see here. I'm pulling it up right now. So we got act 1, the setup, and that has like opening image, something peculiar, status quo, theme statement, catalyst, debate, break into act 2. Act 2A, promise of premise, that's where fun and games in the midpoint come in. Then act 2B, the bad guys close in, Eye of the Storm, all is lost, Dark Night of the Soul, break into act 3, and then act 3 is the finale. Action plan, all goes wrong, shortcut temptation, theme prevails, resolution, and closing image. So right now I have act 1 plotted because I've already written act 1. Once I finish a chapter or an act, I'll go through and I'll plug it into this outline so that I can have a like snapshot of each chapter, main points in each chapter, each scene, and so. But I do that after I write the first draft or during writing the first draft. It really depends on how I feel about the situation. So as a discovery writer, I come up with random things to do throughout the process. I'll get ideas for scenes, so I'll write down like whatever idea that I have thought up. I'll make a note of it, and I have a folder here called Disorganized Scenes, and that'll be like, it'll hold all the scenes that like I come up with but don't have an exact place at the time. So I'll be able to move them into the story as necessary. This is just my way of doing things. I know it's really chaotic. But I definitely thrive in this sort of environment where I don't quite know what's going to happen next. So before, in September, I had plotted the last 3 chapters of Act 1 in Antimatter, and I could not force myself to write because it was like I have already plotted, so I already know what's going to happen. And that's the way my brain works. If I plot beforehand, if I'm like, this is what's going to happen, this, and this, I get bored. I've already basically told myself the story, so I don't need to write it. And it's just, that's the way my brain works. So having a general sense of what I want to do in a chapter is doable for me. My brain accepts that. But if I go into too much detail, then I get bored with the project. So a little, let's go back over this, just a recap. So I start off with a basic concept for a plot and a character. And then I generally sit down and start writing. I do character profiles somewhere within the writing process. I'll start out with some really basic information and then I'll flesh it out as I'm writing, and learning more about the character and their backstory and everything like that. Um, I plot after I've written to keep things in order so that I have a snapshot view and know the general like direction I'm going with the story. Um and yeah, that's about it. That's my chaotic way of planning a book. So it's just a lot of doing things in the moment and going by feel and how like how I feel when I sit down to write. That really determines the tone of the scene that I'm going to write and the subject matter that I want to focus on. So, yeah. If you could like, subscribe, share, comment. Um, I'd love to hear how you plot your books in the comments. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.